Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Cougar Mountain Denali webinar series. Today we're going to be doing a webinar about the Advanced General Ledger Reports. My name is Jeremy Beislein. I am a trainer here at Cougar Mountain Software, and I will be your presenter today. Okay, so today's topics, we're going to go ahead and do a quick review of the General Ledger Reports, which will kind of steer us into the Advanced Report Group Codes, which is what our webinar today is all about. Basically setting up advanced report groups that you can customize your general ledger financial reports how you need them to appear. We'll talk about creating the subgroups and then the primary groups, which is the actual report group layout. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started on the session here today. Welcome to everybody. A couple people just joining us. We want to welcome you to our webinar, and glad you're here. Okay, so in Denali General Ledger, we've got our basic reports, our balance sheet and income reports that you can run. I'll just pull one up here real quick. You've got the different report types here that you can run based on what information you want to show up on the report. Of course, the detailed report is just a straightforward income and expenses in our income statement report. Classified groups those reports, those groupings together, your accounts together in the account group 1 settings. As you see here, we've got sales, that's one group. Adjustments, net revenue, sales, cost of goods sold, that's another group. Operating expenses is another group. Now what's nice about the classified is it does give a little more detailed information, and it will group your accounts together based on how you have them set up using the Report Group 1 option in the account setup as shown here. I'll bring up an account and we'll show you here. This group right here. This right here classifies those accounts on those classified income statement and balance sheet reports. And of course Denali has these default groups already set up based on the account class that you set here. You can choose which group 1 would fit under that class. And that will show the account information in that group on the report. As you can see, the report does show each account, even on a classified group. It will show every account on the report as an individual line item on the report, and it will put that account under whichever group you have it set up under the Group 1 setting in the account maintenance setup. And so scrolling down on this basic report, we have a group that's just other expenses. And most of our expense accounts we put in this group here. And so you can see on our income statement, each individual general ledger account is a separate line item on this report. Now I chose not to skip zero balances, so it's showing all accounts that have a zero balance as well on this report. And the reason I'm showing that is because I wanted to illustrate what this report actually shows. You can tell it not to show the accounts with a zero balance because if there's no balance, they're not going to reflect the net income on the income statement. Same with your balance sheet report. You can tell it not to show accounts with zero balances as well. But there's a lot of us that might not want to see each and every general ledger account on our income statement. We might want to group some accounts together as a single line item. For example, we might want to take all of our benefits here. These are separate GL accounts, and group them together under one line item just called benefit expense. That is where your advanced general ledger group codes come in. You can actually create your own group code for each line item that you want on the report so that it doesn't show every single account. It'll group all of these numbers together as one total when you run that report. So we'll go ahead and show that real quick, how to set that up. Basically, that's going to be under the Options, Codes, Advanced Report Group Codes right here. This is where you set up those groups that you want to group accounts together into one line item on your report. So let's create a group and call it Benefits. Now we can only do 6 characters, so we can only do 6 on our code. The code is limited to 6 characters like all other codes in Denali. So we will call this benefit group. And then what you do is this is going to be a revenue expense group because we have the 2 main types, asset, liability, equity, that's for balance sheet reports. revenue and expenses for your income statement or profit and loss reports. So what we do is we create this group, and then we're going to go through and we're going to find those benefits. There they are right there. So we're going to take all of the benefits accounts here and add them to this group and save that as a group. Now what we've just done is we created this group here, and it's grouping all these accounts together into one line item. We can run the report now using the advanced report groups to show that this is one line item on the report. But we do have to go a step further on this. This is what's called a subgroup. This benefits group is a subgroup. That's where you take the individual accounts and group them together into single line items like we've done here. Now what we want to do is we want to, after we've got all of our subgroups created, now we want to create another group that's our primary group. The primary group is the actual report layout itself. And what we do on that is we set up our group code. Let's call it PL Sum. I actually have one created already. Profit and loss summary is what we call this one. Now on this group, the primary group, this is the report that I want to run. This is my profit and loss statement, my income statement that I'm going to run. And as you can see, I've taken all the subgroups and put them together on this primary group. These are my line items that's going to show up on my report. These are the income line items, these are the income adjustments, and now I've got my expenses here. Now I can also add individual accounts on the report as well as needed. So there's another group, insurance expense. But what we do is, where's our benefit that we just created? Here's our benefits group right here. We can add that to the report if we'd like. And now it's also included on the report here. Now this is in red, and the reason why is because there are accounts in this group that are already included in another group on this report. So that warning is just telling you you might be doubling up on that, and so it gives you that warning. So I'm going to remove that because I've got that created already in another group. So basically you create your line items as subgroups, then you pull all of those line items together in your primary group that you're going to run your report on. And then once we save that group, now when we run our report, same report, only we're going to tell it to use the advanced report groups instead of just going with the standard report. And what is our report group? It's our main report group, the primary group that we created, because that's our report. So we're going to run the primary group report here. Now what this is going to do is it's going to group all of those accounts together into the groups. This is one of my groups that I have, and here's all the accounts listed under that group. Here's another group I have, and here's all the accounts listed under that group. So as you can see, they're now being grouped together in these different groups. If we go down to all of our expenses here, we can see all these groups. Here's a payroll expense group that I created, and all the accounts listed under that. And then there's our total payroll expense group. Now we have other expenses that we wanted to add to the report that are not part of a group. That's what all these are here. And then our profit and loss summary total, that is the total group under that classification, under the other expenses classification. Now we have tax expenses. This is another classification set up in the account setup, and these are the accounts under that classification that we've set up under our groups that we've created, the advanced report groups. So you can see how it groups them all together. And I know everybody's probably looking at this saying, well, wait a minute, it's still listing each account individually on the report. And that is because you have that option. When you create those groups, you can say, I want to group the accounts together but still list them separately on the report. So it groups them all together in one total, but it gives each account listed separately as well. Or maybe you don't want that. Maybe the goal is to do what we were talking about and grouping the accounts as one line item on the report so that you can see just the one number and you don't have a several page report. And that is done right here. When you check this box, print group totals only, that's going to take away each individual account from the report and just print the group totals only. So now each of these groups are your line items on the report, But all the accounts in that group are not going to show up on the report. All you're going to see is just the group totals. So if we show that report here, print the account number for the ones that are going to show up, but we're going to use advanced report groups right there. So let's run our advanced report group that we created. And just like everything else in Denali, if you double click, you can actually select from the list what group you want to run this report for. And when we click OK, now all we're going to see is our group totals. We're not going to see each account listed, as you can see here. Operating expenses and other expenses. Selling, depreciation, administrative. See, these are all of my groups that I've created. Payroll salary group total. Other payroll expenses and taxes. You also have a other payroll expense under the tax category because some of our other payroll expense accounts are classified in the group 1 setting on the account maintenance as tax expenses rather than just other expenses. So they will be put under the main report group 1, and then our custom group that we've set up, our advanced report group, is this one here. So that simplifies your income statement, and it designs that income statement exactly like you want it to appear. So you can create that statement to show you exactly what you want. You can also do that with balance sheet groups. So let's talk about that here. When you're creating a balance sheet group, then it's going to be an asset liability equity group. Let's say we want to group all of our cash accounts into one line item on the report. We can put all these cash accounts right here, maybe keep bank adjustments separately. So we're going to only select the ones we want. There's all of our cash accounts right there. So we can add those. That's now one group, one advanced report group, and we can create a group for that. So it just so happens that I have one created for that already. Right there, that's our subgroup. So that's one of our line items on the balance sheet. So we can run a balance sheet report that only shows these accounts, or it shows all these accounts, but it will group them together into a group code, an advanced report group code on the balance sheet report. And if we tell the primary group to only show the totals, then it's not going to list each account individually. It'll just show one line item on your balance sheet report for cash accounts. So let's take a look at that here. I actually have a balance sheet summary group. This is our primary group here for the balance sheet. I've got it set to only print group totals, and we've got our cash group, accounts receivable group, inventory group. Now these individual accounts are accounts that are not part of the groups. So I've added those to the primary group because I still want those to be separated individually. Then we have liability groups and the individual liability accounts. And then we have our equity accounts on the balance sheet report. Now when you're running a balance sheet report, for the primary balance sheet group, you also need to include a primary income and expense group. The reason for that is because for the balance sheet to balance, it needs to take the net income from this group and put it as the net income line item on the balance sheet. So make sure when you're doing your primary group for the balance sheet report, you include an income and expense group report as well. If you don't include an income and expense report group, it will just take the total net income of all accounts, all income and expense accounts, and summarize that as your net income line item on the balance sheet. But this gives you the option to only include specific accounts that you want them to include. So now we've got our balance sheet group. We can run our balance sheet report using the advanced group. Use advanced report group here, and we're going to run our balance sheet summary report. Now remember, I told it to only show the totals. It's not going to show each account. It's only going to show the group totals. Each group is a line item instead of each GL account. But what about this warning that just popped up? Some GL accounts may be missing, which would cause the report to be out of balance. That's the one thing about setting up report groups, is if you do not include all balance sheet accounts in your subgroup somewhere, then it's going to throw your balance sheet out of balance, because if the account is not included, it's not going to be part of the report. And that could potentially throw your balance sheet out of balance. And I'll talk about that in just a moment here after I get done showing this report here. So we're running an advanced classified balance sheet report here, and as you can see, we're just showing the groups. Cash group, accounts receivable, inventory, and then our balance sheet summary group total for current assets. Now we've got fixed assets, and we've got the balance sheet summary group total for fixed assets. I don't have any fixed assets groups, and there's no balances in my fixed asset accounts right now on our demo company, so that's why it's just a zero amount, is what you're seeing here. Our liabilities, I've grouped those together in line items instead of showing each account. We're just showing the categories that I wanted to put those in. And then we have our equity groups. Now what's nice about this is on your equity section of the advanced balance sheet report, when you are using advanced groups, if you put in an income and expense group as a subgroup under this report, it's going to show the different groupings from that income and expense group. And that's all part of balancing out your balance sheet. So that's kind of categorizing your net income. Instead of just doing it under one line item here, it breaks it up for you. You've got sales, income, inventory adjustments, other expenses, and that's all included as part of your balance sheet report because we included that income and expense group as part of the balance sheet group. And then you got your total net income here. Now, of course, we're out of balance because, like I was saying, not every balance sheet account is included on this report because we left some of them out of our groups. If we include every balance sheet account in our groups, we should not be out of balance. So bringing up our group again, here's our balance sheet report. These are all the groups, and these are all the accounts that are not part of the groups. However, over here is accounts we can add that are not included, but some of these accounts are in red. They're kind of a faded red color. That means that they're already included in one of the groups that we have over here, if the account is in red. But look, we have one right here that's not included at all. And so this account is still in black, which means it's completely left out of that balance sheet report. We have another one here that's left out. Going on down, we've got a bunch of them right here that are left out. And because these accounts are left out, that is potentially throwing our balance sheet out of balance. So how do we have Denali tell us that we could potentially be out of balance, and what can we do to fix it? When you're creating a balance sheet group, and this works with income and expense groups as well, what you want to do is you want to click this button here that says Assess. This will assess the primary group, and it will basically tell you the following accounts are not included in this group or any of its subgroups. So this report may be run without adding these accounts, but just keep in mind, if these accounts are not included, it will potentially throw your balance sheet report out of balance. So by clicking on the Assess, that's kind of a check system there that checks it to make sure that everything that you need to be included will be included. If there's anything that's not included, then it's going to show up on that report. Now, suppose you're aware of that and you say, that's okay. I know it's going to be out of balance because I don't want those accounts included on my report. With Denali Advanced Report Groups, you have that option. So you can go ahead and run these reports just like we did with this one here that doesn't include all the numbers that could potentially throw you out of balance. However, by running the Assess here, you can see the accounts that are missing and include those somewhere in either the primary group or in one of the subgroups to make sure they're all included. And the same thing with your income expense groups as well. If we run our profit and loss, our PL summary group right here, then we can run an assessment on this group, and this will show all of our income and expense accounts that are missing. So our net income could potentially be inaccurate because some of these accounts are missing from this primary report grouping. So if you want the bottom line to be accurate on the net income and the balance sheet to balance, make sure that every account is included either as part of the primary group or included in one of the subgroups. And once all of your accounts are included for the primary group, then your reports will have, the bottom line will be accurate for sure on that. So one of the other options you can do with that is, let's say you want to run a report and only show the subgroup. So let's just run the report for the cash accounts only. You can definitely do that in Denali. We can run our balance sheet report and only show the cash accounts. So there we go. There's our balance sheet report with just the cash accounts. And of course our net income is going to be thrown in on here because the balance sheet includes net income. The cash account does not have a net income grouping, so it's doing all net income accounts. But that gives you a balance sheet report of all the cash accounts in the group. And I told the cash group to not show summary only, so it is listing each account, but it's doing the groups together. It's grouping them together as a total here. Get my mouse to work right. That's the cash group total. But that's all you see on this report. All the other balance sheet accounts are missing because we only ran this report for the subgroup instead of for the primary group. You can do that with your income statement as well. We're going to run it for period 1 through 15, which is our current period. We're going to use advanced report groups, and we're going to say, let's look at payroll salaries. That's a good one there. So this is just one of the subgroups. So all we're going to see on this report, actually I want to uncheck that just to make sure they're all included. All we're going to see on this report are just the accounts for the payroll subgroup. Sales is 0 because there's no sales accounts included. Selling expenses, there we go. Here's our payroll subgroup accounts. Some of these accounts are under the selling expense category in the account setup. Some of them are under the administrative expense category in the account setup. So you'll see them broken out separately on the report. But that's all we're seeing is only the accounts in the payroll salaries group, the payroll salaries subgroup. And then we have our total here, the payroll salaries. So if you wanted to run an expense report, in effect, is what this would be, of just a subgroup, you could definitely use the subgroups to do that. All right, so that is how the General Ledger advanced groups work in Denali. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and get to our questions here. Okay, so here's a question from Michael. It says, why do you see the profit and loss summary total so many times instead of the subgroup heading? The reason why is because it's giving you a profit and loss summary total. That is the primary group. That's the name of the primary group. You see that for each report group 1 setting that you have on the accounts. So the way that works is when you're in the general ledger, I'll switch back over and show you that real quick. When you're setting up your chart of accounts in the general ledger, you assign each account to a group 1 here. This is the primary grouping on those reports. The advanced report group is a subgroup under that grouping, and then the sub-advanced report groups are subgroups under the primary advanced report groups, which runs under these groups here. So it's important that you set up your group 1 on each account correctly, because that's going to determine where they're going to appear on your profit and loss reports and on your balance sheet reports as well. The next one says, where are the retained earnings on the balance sheet? Okay, so let me show you how that works. When you're running a balance sheet report, we're going to go with, we'll skip zero balance there, that'll work. Use the advanced reports. I'm going to go with period 15. See, since I moved it up to period 15, now we have income expense activity. It's going to ask you for the retained earnings account here. So we put the report group that we want to run, our balance sheet summary. Then we're going to put our retained earnings account that we want the retained earnings to show up for on the balance sheet and run that report. So now it's going to show that up correctly as it's supposed to down in the equity section. And I told it not to print account numbers, didn't I? So this is our balance sheet summary. That's our advanced report group. These are each of the subgroups. And then this is our profit and loss summary that gives us our net income. but our equity is the primary report group. And it's going to break all these out based on your advanced report groups, and that's going to show your net income right there. Okay, so I know what I did. The balance sheet summary group is only showing group totals, so it's not showing the account numbers themselves. So if we tell it to show account numbers, it should show that. Of course, that's going to show all accounts if we do that. And that's where it's going to show your retained earnings. 15, print the account number so we can see it, 3,200. And we want to use advanced report groups. See, the retained earnings account on the balance sheet works the same whether you're using advanced report groups or one of the standard report types. It will work the same way. And now we should see that on here. If we're just doing group totals, though, all we're going to see is the group totals. There's our retained earnings account there. But because we're using advanced report groups, it's going to show our net income and expenses based on the income and expense group that we attach to the balance sheet group. And this is our income and expense group that we attached to our balance sheet group. So we see the total of that, which is basically our net income. All right. Okay, so another question from Tamara. Is the balance sheet summary total line the beginning retained earnings then? Now, if you're only showing group totals and you're not showing the individual accounts, the retained earnings account will be included with the other equity accounts that are grouped together, however you group them in the advanced report group. Because when you're setting up your advanced report groups, you can group that retained earnings account with the other equity accounts, or you can set it up separately in its own subgroup, which I didn't set up a subgroup for the equity accounts. So you can set up a subgroup for the retained earnings account or accounts if you have more than one, and then that will show up as a separate line item on the report when you're running your balance sheet report to print group totals only. This report here. So if we were to set this report to only show the group totals, and then you set up the retained earnings in its own separate subgroup, that's going to show up separately on the report. Basically, the subgroups are the lines that you're creating for your primary group. And then the primary group is the actual report you're running itself. Okay, so that's basically how you set up your own custom advanced balance sheet and income statement reports. Again, make sure you assess the reports or the groups to make on the primary groups. Make sure you run the assessment so that all accounts are included and nothing's left out, so you'll get a bottom line figure on your custom reports that is accurate for your organization. Denali allows you to run those reports if there are some accounts missing, but your bottom line numbers might not be accurate. Now, when you run those reports, you do get that warning that says that. So I'll show you one more time, just so that we have that warning here. Use advanced report groups. Balance sheet summary, 3,200 retained earnings. Right here, this warning is what I'm talking about. It says right here that some of the accounts may be missing, which will cause the report to be out of balance. Same with your income statement. If some accounts are missing, it'll cause your net income bottom line to not be accurate for your entire organization. But maybe it's how you want it because you're setting up an advanced report group, income statement report group, for only a certain segment of your company. And you'll include just those accounts there, and it'll show just the net income for those accounts in those subgroups that you put together on the primary group. So there's several functions you can use this for. Go ahead and cancel that. You can use it to group accounts together to show only what you want on the financial statement, or you can create groups to customize how the reports look for your overall organization. And you can customize to group accounts together on line items on the report. All right, so with that, that completes our webinar today. Be sure to check back. We've got additional webinars coming up here. The next one we have coming up is going to be on March 4th. The webinar on March 4th is going to be dealing with the purchase order module, specifically how to deal with landing costs such as freight, shipping, extra taxes, things like that for your inventory items. So those of you who have the purchase order module and are using inventory as well, be sure to check back with us on March 4th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific time for the next webinar. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to give your sales rep a call, or you can send an email to our tech support email address there with any questions or comments. And also make sure to keep an eye out for follow-up communications and access to this webinar recorded presentation. Thank you so much for attending, everyone. It's been my pleasure to present this webinar, and have a great day.